discuss everything directly. Fantastic. So as you all know, lots of you, there's a mixture of people here. We've got other people that have signed up because they've heard about it on the grapevine as well. So I don't know everybody, but just to put you in the picture, Jon, we've got young people here who are interested in acting, interested in directing, interested in other theatre roles sort of across the board. So obviously the director has such a key and crucial role in any theatrical production. And it really is the one role that ties all of the other roles together, you know, from tech to actors, wardrobe, producers, everyone sort of kind of ends up having some kind of interaction with the director. So tonight's workshop is we're going to find out what directing is, how a director's role relates to other roles in a theatre production, and hopefully some key insights for those of you wanting to go into directing, but also acting, and how the director and the actor relationship works, really. A couple of housekeeping bits before we start. Can you please keep your mics off until the Q&A at the end? If you do get a burning question that pops up during the conversation, then please do stick it in the chat box. And then at the end of the conversation, we can go through them all, which would be great. And then obviously we are recording the session, so do feel free to keep your video off if you prefer. And that's it, I think, housekeeping wise. Right, so I am very honoured to say that we have Jon Emmanuel with us this evening. Woohoo! Jon, thank you so much for joining us. I am going to make a very rudimentary attempt at reading your bio. So please correct me if I make any mistakes. Just to let you all know, Jon was my assistant director at Dear Evan Hansen. He has extensive experience in directing, having been resident director for Fame at the Aldwych, directing the young Tommies in the Tommy UK tour. He's directed for TV, everything theatre from pantos to musicals, and has been associate director on multiple West End shows and top UK tours such as Driving Miss Daisy, Jersey Boys, and Dear Evan Hansen. Jon, have I got that in a nutshell on the money?
It sounds fantastic. Yes, it does. I just want to say thank you very much for having me, because it's very exciting to be here and to meet you all. Also, something you might want to add as well, since you've got a variety of interests on this webcam tonight, but I was an actor first for 18 years myself. So we've got three perspectives here. I know what it's like to be an actor, so please feel free to ask any questions about that. As Hannah says, I migrated into directing, and on top of that, I've actually directed Hannah. So,
which is terrifying, which
will be very interesting for me to ask you some questions about what that was like. But yeah, I've done a bit of both. So please feel free to ask anything you want to ask about anything.
Amazing. I mean, that was pretty much going to be my first question anyway, was can you just tell us a little bit about yourself personally in your career and how you got into directing? Because I think one of the things that we're really keen to do with RicNic is to show young people creative pathways into the industry, and career pathways that aren't necessarily through the acting route, because we find that a lot of directors, choreographers that I know, even a lot of our tech on Dear Evan Hansen, they all were actors at one time, which I think is so amazing. But we also want to, I would love, if there's a young person who has a passion for directing, or, a person who's going to go into acting, but maybe finds that that's not their niche. There are so many different pathways to go down. When I grew up, I kind of thought that being involved in theatre meant you had to act, sing or dance. And actually, there's a myriad of roles that go into putting a theatre show on. And I think that we really want to just, broaden the spectrum of opportunities that are available for people, for young people going into the arts. It's not just about singing, acting and dancing, if you want to be involved in the theatre. So, okay, so what is directing then, Jon, in a nutshell to you, and what does it mean to direct?
Well, I think directing primarily is to lead. It's to be the figurehead of all the creative team. But part of that is you first get appointed by the producer. The producer actually usually puts the team together, but very often they will ask you, is there a designer you wish to work with? Is there a musical director you wish to work with? Or sound designer, costume designer, wardrobe, choreographer, all those things. Sometimes the team will be assembled for you by the producer. Other times you can have some input yourself and bring your own colleagues to the table, and it's from start to finish. It's about there's two different sorts of directing. One of which I've done most of, which is to look after other people's shows. I haven't directed as that much of my own work. I have done that, but I've gone down the path. I'm very happy to do it, of being associate director, assistant director, resident director of shows. But if you are going to direct something from scratch, it involves having a vision.
Not mine. Mine.
Hello, Trinity. Trinity, would you mind? There we go. Fabulous. Carry on, John. Sorry.
Well, it goes from start to finish. Having a vision at the beginning, and then discussing that vision with your creative team. To discuss what the production is going to look like, what it'll sound like, how the director has a vision for the impact, what's important about this show to convey to audiences. They have those pre-production meetings for, it can be sometimes years, I think, but very often months in advance. And then you have to go into a casting process where casting director will talk to you and ask you what sort of people you're looking for, what's the cast breakdown, and what sort of people you're looking for, and they will find a pool of talent, and they will call you into auditions. These people will come and audition for you over a process of weeks, and you will finally end up with your cast. And then the day comes when you have your first day of rehearsals, when you start to share your vision with that cast, and then you start to create in the room. But already a lot of decisions will have been made, like about the design, set design, costume design, and all those things. So some of those things are immovable because they've already been decided in advance. The really exciting bit happens in the rehearsal room, when you then start to discuss your vision and put it on its feet. And for me, that's the true collaboration. All of these different people, if you're open to it, can make your vision even better. And one of the most exciting things for me is when somebody else comes up with something I've not thought of, and that includes the acting decisions as well. But yes, so you lead the rehearsal process, which is usually about 4 weeks, maybe 5 or 6 weeks. Then you end up moving to the theatre, technical rehearsals, putting it all together, preview start. You start to really hone the production, and when you see what works and what doesn't, got some time to change it, and then you get to opening night, press night, and hopefully you've got a hit on your hands.
Wow. So, I mean, the directing role is literally there from almost the conception of the piece. Would you say in your experience that the conception has usually started with a producer, or does it start with a director? Does it start with a producer and then them bringing a director in and then a collaboration? What's that sort of initial creative?
I think all things are possible. I think sometimes a producer has found a writer, or a writer's found a producer, and they've been nurturing the idea. Sometimes an idea exists, but they need a director to shape it. I should think somebody like Matthew Warchus, I imagine, with Matilda, probably had a huge input in the development. I don't know that, but I would say that somebody like that would have a lot of impact on the development. Michael Greif on Dear Evan Hansen.
Yeah.
I mean, if we take that, because Hannah and I worked on Dear Evan Hansen together, if we take that, I think the producer in that instance, Stacey, discovered Pasek and Paul at university.
Yeah.
And she loved their work, and she said to them, I have faith in you, I trust you, what would you like to do next? And gave them the creative nurturing to say, well, we'd like to do a show about this story that I came up with. And then she nurtured them as they went through it, and I think workshopped, and then eventually brought Michael Greif in, who is a brilliant show developer, who has the artistic eye and the narrative eye to say, no, this will work on stage. So I think all things are possible. It depends. Sometimes the director and the writer have a personal relationship from university or something like that, and they know each other, so it can happen that way. Then they've got to find a producer to believe in it.
Right. So it can be either, really, but you're looking at a producer and a director and a writer are kind of those three, sort of the holy trinity of the theatrical production.
Yeah, you do, because I think, most productions are going to need a workshop, probably, and that needs money. So you need a producer to find the money and to have the contacts and be able to afford for rehearsal rooms and all those things, because it all costs money to bring all these people together. So yes, you can't really, you can do a lot of stuff behind the scenes before you get a producer. If you have a personal relationship with somebody, like let's come up with this idea, but then you've got to sell it to a producer. You need a producer. Right.
How did you get into directing then? What was your link in to the job?
For me, I had a lovely acting career, which I really enjoyed, but eventually started to realize it wasn't fulfilling me the way I needed to be fulfilled anymore. Namely, I'd achieved all the ambitions I'd set myself as an actor. I was very lucky. I played a lot of parts that I'd always wanted to play. I was then starting to feel that I wasn't using my brain very much, and I wanted to have more responsibility. So I thought about direction. I also worked with a lot of people who do my job now, who I didn't feel were great. And I felt that with a little bit of communication and understanding of human beings, and I could probably make a bit of a difference, was part of my reason. So with me, what happened with me was I realized that going from being an actor of 18 years and wanting to direct, you'd have to start at the very beginning, the very bottom, which I was very happy to do. I just really searched my contacts and thought, who do I know? Who do I know? And I wrote to a pantomime company who I know had seen me in panto once and said, look, this is my situation. I think I could direct. I'll do anything, anywhere.
Yeah.
And they took a chance on me. They said that because they'd seen my work as an actor, they very kindly thought they could trust me with this panto, and they sent me up to Grimsby, which was... I
was going to say, I saw that on your CV. I was raised about half an hour south of Grimsby, so I know it very well, yeah.
Well, it was fantastic. And I had the best experience. What I would do was, I was in Fame at the time in London. So you get 4 weeks holiday a year. And I took 2 weeks of my annual holiday. And I went up the motorway to Grimsby, directed the panto for 2 weeks, and then came straight back and was back into Fame in the West End.
Wow.
I did that for the same company for 3 years while I was in Fame, just to get the experience, because as we all know, success breeds success. And you just need to get something on your CV just to show that you can do it. And so I did that to get the experience, to be able to say I had something on my CV. And then I was and I then found out along the grapevine that the resident director on Fame that I was in was going to take a sabbatical to go and direct something somewhere else. So I just got smart and I contacted the director and I said, I've heard that you might be losing a resident director. I direct a little bit. Could I help? And they went, yes. And
That's great.
And they, of course, they wanted me to be in the show and be resident director at the same time to save money for them. But I did that for 3 months. That was very successful because I think there wasn't an awful lot of TLC for the production, and all actors actually do like to know their work is being watched, and they like to work with people on the whole. And just good communication, talking to the actors, and it was very, very rewarding for me and for them, I think, just because I really cared about it. It has other challenges. If you're ever directing something with colleagues and you're in the same show with them, that's a challenge, because you don't usually give notes to other actors. So that was an interesting baptism by fire. But
I've heard friends of mine that have been dance captains on shows have said something very similar, because obviously the dance captain role, which we'll cover in another one of these conversations, you're quite often on stage with the company at the same time. So then to be giving notes to your sort of fellow actors or fellow dancers, it can be a tricky thing. But I wanted to come to that a bit later with you as well, of like how to be the kind of actor that is easy to work with and that doesn't necessarily get the hump in those situations and continues to remain sort of on any how do you balance I'll just ask you now, how do you balance having the confidence and the ego, not in a bad way but in a good way, required to be an actor, but at the same time be able to take direction? It's a fine balance, isn't it?
It is a fine balance, because we're asking, everything I'm going to say today is be confident of your vision, and you must be like that as an actor as well. You can have self-belief and self-confidence, as you're saying. You do need to have a bit of ego somewhere as an actor, because it's a very tough business. You've got to be very resilient, and tough, and you get a lot of rejection along the way. There can't be a single actor that's ever lived that's not had rejection, and it's how you deal with rejection and the bad stuff which really forms you, and hopefully doesn't make you bitter, but makes you more appreciative of when things come along. So how do you balance it? You've got to find. I mean, I don't know when you want to talk about this, but I think the most important thing to build with between a director and an actor is trust. You've got to create an environment where an actor feels able to do their very best work, and to be bold and make bold choices, and to be prepared to fail. That's what the rehearsal room's for, because you never know what you're going to discover if you really go for it and try things. And the way I would have directed you the same way, Hannah, as well, is it's part of my process in directing anybody in, is to go too far, go not far enough, and you will in those 4 weeks eventually, hopefully, usually find your middle ground, which is the performance,
the sweet spot.
Yeah, the sweet spot. And you've got to have the freedom to go too far and not far enough, till you find that happy balance. So an actor, hopefully the best relationship I've had with actors is when you're totally in tune with each other and they trust you. And something I take very personally, because I was an actor, is that obviously my first responsibility is to the director's vision and to the production, but also to the audience. That is my first responsibility. But I do take it very personally that I make sure that I support the actor and make sure they come across as well as they can as well, and they enjoy it as well. So for me, it's about getting what I need them to do for Michael Greif's sake, but also making sure that they feel like they're doing their best work and they're not being forced into something. They feel like it's an organic process for them as well, because a lot of the work I do does require me to ask people to copy in one respect, very, very set, detailed direction. So it's a case of hopefully an actor will trust you when you have to say no, I don't think so. They'll go. They won't take it personally. They'll go, okay, I trust you. Okay, if that's what you say. And sometimes people go, really? Okay, but I get it. The best way is when you're completely in sync with each other and you go backstage after a show and they go, it didn't work, did it? It's when you're that's the best thing, when it's not personal, it's about teamwork and collaboration and both feeling what is right. And when you're in tune with each other, which happens quite a lot, that's the best way, because it's not about finding fault or what's right and what's wrong, really. It's about both, I say both, but all the team, everybody feeling that they're on the same page and on the same path.
Yeah, I think the best bit of advice I was ever given in terms of receiving notes was, someone said to me, if you ever get a note, no matter who it's from, especially if it's from your director, just say thank you. And I was like, because there's a natural instinct as an actor to take it as criticism or to give a reason for why you did it the way you did it. Oh, well, I did it because I was feeling this at the time. But actually, if you can receive the note and be grateful for the note, because the director's job is always to serve you and to serve the piece and to serve how you're coming across as an actor in the piece for the benefit of the ultimate person who matters, which is the audience member. So yeah, that was just a tiny bit of advice that I had that changed everything for me. I was like, oh, I don't have to take this as a criticism. It doesn't mean I did something wrong. This is a tiny gift I'm being given to improve my performance from my director. So I found that hugely helpful. In terms of different, because I've worked with a few directors and some have been very kind of paint by numbers and some have been very, workshoppy in the process of, like, you drop your plastic water bottle on the floor by accident and the director will go, yes, he's an alcoholic. So it's like, how have you found the balance between, what does directing look like to you? Because some of our young people are directing for the first time and they're directing their peers in a show that they have chosen. So how do you go about that process, and how do you find the balance between paint by numbers, like stand here and say this line and stand there and say that line, and actually finding a more organic process?
Well, there are two things. If you're doing a brand new show, like your students might be doing by the sounds of it, everything is to play for. You know, that the best productions, actually the most enjoyable, are the ones where you're the original cast, or where you're creating a panto in rep, or a play in rep, or something where it's a new production. That's not an issue. So if you're asking me about what it's like to maintain a West End show, which is pretty much paint by numbers, they're two very different things. But I will talk to you about what I have to do mostly in my job, which is I've been doing Jersey Boys now for 16 years. I'm going to go in tomorrow and rehearse another new Tommy DeVito in. He will have to do what every single Tommy DeVito has had to do. And I know that he might find that frustrating, but so my approach to that is to understand that, because I know what it's like as an actor to be told what to do, but I have to convey to them that I'm very open to them trying things up as if they want to try things in the process, but be aware that there will be limitations to what they can and cannot do.
Right.
And you just try and find victories. You try and find little things that, you know, so you're not constantly saying no. One of the first things I try and do with actors, I win their trust. I hope doesn't always work, but you've got to win their trust, because a lot of the actors tend to feel like you may be trying to quash their laughs. You're usually not trying to quash a laugh. You're trying to get a classy laugh.
Right.
You're trying to avoid a cheap laugh. So a lot of actors do feel that you're trying to spoil their fun. So you try and find a place where that you can get them a laugh. So you know that that's not. I'm trying to let you have an opportunity to be organic for yourself. It never works. The painting by numbers thing actually doesn't work. If you paint by numbers, you have got to go from inside it, making it an internal note, and explain why they're doing what they're doing. Right. Because
so even like in Dear Evan Hansen, for example, where it's like stand on the number 7 and cry on the third word of the sentence, for example, how have you gotten actors around that? Do you tell them to stand on 7 and cry, or do you sort of use other language to work them towards it? How do you kind of do that?
Well, standing on number 7, if they don't want to stand on number 7, they won't be lit, because the lights are on number 7. So certain things like that, you can't change those things. But in terms of we need you to cry at this point, well, I would have done the same to you in your audition, Hannah. I know that that there's a level of depth of emotion which our director would like to get into the scene, and that's not easy, as you know. That's not easy to do. So you have to. I would say to them, "This is my aiming point. This is what I would like to happen." And feel free to go as far as you want emotionally, just to take because it's not easy just to cry on command. It's not.
Unless you're Lauren Ward.
Yeah. But I have to know that you as an actress may take the 4 weeks of rehearsal to find a way of doing that. But I can say, all I can say is this is what we're aiming for at the beginning of the rehearsal process. You probably can't go far enough, I might say, and I might then help you if you need it. I might help you with thoughts and processes. I might go into the whole story. I might give you backstory. We might even have to talk about what probably happened the scene before, why you might be in an emotional state, or remind you of what happened in the last time we saw you together, in those sorts of things. So. I'll give you an example. In Jersey Boys, the director absolutely insists. There's a line where an actress has to say, they're like Chinese twins, she goes, and he wants to do a full stop in the air, right? Now, so Chinese twins.
Right.
He has asked me every actress has to do that. Now, I think that's not the best way to get a laugh on a line, because the actress doesn't know why that's being done. I think what's happened there is that probably 16 years ago or 18 years ago on Broadway, the actress doing it had a great success doing it that way.
Someone did it once and it worked.
Yeah. Now, I have to respect my director. My personal opinion is that is not organic, and that's very difficult to tell an actress how to do to get a laugh. So what I try and do is I just let them go for a while and don't tell them that direction. And what seems to work so far, if you just let somebody organically find the laugh, most people will get it very quickly.
Right.
You tell them how to get the laugh, they won't for a long time, and they'll feel uncomfortable and they won't know why they're doing it. So
Yeah.
what often happens is over 4 weeks, by the time the director gets to see this actress, we've usually found a way of making it work without him insisting on the finger point. But it's you've got to let actors find their own response to the material as well. But there are things which are finite. I mean, a lot of just so you know, in things, a lot of shows now, but particularly in Jersey Boys, a lot of the show is underscored. So you have only got a set amount of time to fit a scene into it, or to fit a speech into it. There is no way around it. If you don't do it quick enough, the music will cut you off and we'll move on to the next scene. So there are some things that just are immovable, but others, I do try and encourage an actor to feel that they can contribute their own ideas, but as long as they know that there are parameters that the director won't go over. And usually it's to stay away from caricature. It's to make it real and authentic people. Yeah. And not get cartoony. Have I answered your question?
Perfectly. And I wanted to ask as well, is it very different kind of directing something that you're coming into as an associate, as opposed to a panto, I guess, where you've got free reign to do whatever you want? You've got the script in front of you and you've got nothing, no template to follow. It's yours. How do you go about that creative process versus, okay, we've been doing this now for 16 years and we kind of know where we're going?
Well, that's a very good question. And I have to say, I had a bit of a shock myself, because I did Jersey Boys for maybe, I don't know, 2 or 3 years. And then I went off to direct my own production of Buddy. And I had a fantastic time because every decision is yours.
Yeah.
Everything is up for grabs. There are no ways that you can agree on, and that's the fantastic thing. There's no template. It's your decision. And I had a fantastic time, and then I came back after like 2 weeks to Jersey Boys, and suddenly went, oh, I'm actually keeping somebody else's work, which I'm very happy to do. But you know, we're all, if we are creative, intelligent people, we may have. As it happens, I have a lot of faith in Jersey Boys, the direction. I have a huge amount of faith in the direction of dear Reverend Hansen. I know it's prescribed, but I've seen what happens if you don't do it. And it's about keeping the focus. It's a very tight story, only 8 people on the stage at the most. The whole audience has got to be looking at the right place at the right time for that piece of information. Otherwise, you miss something. So, but coming back, I did find very difficult, because it was, when
everyone's in the pocket, it's so beautiful and so perfect, and it's like fireworks go off, isn't it, when everyone's running with the same energy towards that same vision.
But how did you find being directed into a show that already exists, and quite clearly there have been lots of decisions taken before you set foot on the stage?
Yeah, it was a difficult process for me, I will be honest. I was definitely, up until that point, more used to doing something that was fresh. And kind of figuring things out with the director as we went, rather than being, also I was covering. So that was, it's a totally different experience being an understudy than it is being the role. You kind of do get a little bit, even with a prescribed show or a show that's been running for many years, as the lead, it's the lead role, you do get that kind of creative input. Whereas as a cover, you know, it is very much, my job is to serve how this person does their job, but you're not that person. So actually getting up and doing their role the way they do it, except you're someone totally different, that was a massive challenge for me. But I really appreciated your approach to that, really, as an associate director as well, because you were very clear. I never, you know, there were times where I was like, you know, I would say to you, you know, you've given me this note 3 times in a row now, and I'm trying to do what you've asked, but I'm obviously not hitting the nail on the head. And I really appreciated those moments when you said, you know, you kind of abandoned the trying to get me to see it through a creative way, and you just went, Hannah, I just need this at this point. And then I was like, oh, okay, because somewhere, you know, I hadn't fully understood that with the note. So, but I massively appreciated your entire sort of attack with how you engaged with us as actors and made sure that we, you know, knew what we were doing, but also were happy, you know, in the role. I know from the very few things that I've directed, it's been really eye-opening for me, because as an actor, you're just like, oh, just treat me nicely and don't get stressed and all these. And then suddenly when you're in a directing role and you've got this deadline coming up and you've got these actors that are all talking when you need them to be concentrating, it is a wild experience. How have you found, how do you approach a situation where you have got an actor who has got the hump, or they have gotten upset with the process, or they don't have enough freedom, or whatever their issue is? How do you sort of manage a company and bring them back to that place of their their well-being and just being okay with what's going on? Because my experience, particularly with Dear Evan Hansen, because we had so many big characters, quite often there'd be someone, what do you do as a director when you're looking an actor in the face and they're giving you those eyes of like, they've got a problem? What do you do?
You've got to try. Every human being on this planet is different anyway. Everybody's got a different work process. You've got to find a way, if you can, of connecting with what each person needs. And very often, and I have to say, I do still regard myself as an actor very much. I constantly think through an actor's eyes. I care about actors very much because I wanted to be cared about myself. So I try to treat actors the way I want to be treated myself. You've just got to keep trying. To be honest, honesty, I think, is what I do with actors. And wait for it, folks. But sometimes that honesty, and I'm talking about in a very advanced situation, sometimes that honesty requires me to say to them, if you do not do this, you will not be asked to stay on again. Right. And that's me being caring, because it's nothing to do with me. It's to do with when the American director comes in, if he does not see what he wants, or if you refuse to do it, it's common sense, isn't it? It's he or she or they are entitled to their vision, and if the person on stage is not delivering a vision like any other job, you probably can't expect to be kept on if it's a long running show. But that's the nuclear option.
That's the last resort.
Yeah, no, I do spend quite a lot of my time having to do this, because most, as we know in life, most people who can be difficult, in inverted commas, or problematic or whatever, it often comes from insecurity. A lot of us insecure. I'm insecure about some things, it's usually with actors, it's an insecurity. They are the ones that are going to have to go on front of a stage in front of 1,000 people, and I need to know what I'm doing tonight, John. So you just have to build confidence and trust, and you just have to explain, if necessary, from a character point of view, why this works. Sometimes they just don't understand what a character might be thinking. Can I just make a point here? Actually, one of the best things you can do as a director, I think, and I think you would most like as actors, is table work. Now, I did this once at drama school, and we did do it again a bit with Dear Evan Hansen. But if you are going to direct any scene, I strongly suggest, and we don't have time to do it on Jersey Boys because it's such a quick process to put people in. But if you can sit around a table and read a scene for a day or whatever, or a few hours or an hour before you stage it, you will be amazed at how, let's say it's a scene with 5 people in it, you'll be amazed at how many different points of view there are about things that happen in that scene that you have never thought of, never occurred to you. And it's only because you talk about it aloud over a period of time, maybe an hour or something, that the deeper into the conversation you'll get, and then suddenly you'll realise that somebody actually has got the complete wrong idea of the scene. They thought, I thought it was his cousin, didn't realise it was his brother. Or you'll be amazed. And if you don't do that, you might find out that 6 months into a run, when it suddenly comes up in conversation, I thought it was this, and you go, no, that's quite fascinating, because I've been an actor in a show myself, and 6 months into it, and suddenly thought of something so obvious that I'd never thought of before in 6 months. But a rehearsal period of 4 weeks is very quick, actually. And you can't think of every single thing a character might think of it. And as your brain starts to relax and the opening like nerves go and you settle into the run, other things come into your mind, And so doing a table read before you even start staging a scene is very useful. I would say.
You would advise doing that table read at the top of working every scene?
I did it once at drama school and it was brilliant.
Yeah.
Yeah, I couldn't believe how different people had viewed the scene to me, because you think your version is probably the only version, and it's amazing. And you the thing is, you can then find out if you're all actually been fighting against each other in a scene because you misunderstood what the scene was about, or there's a fundamental misunderstanding of who they were talking about. Even it's a strange thing. So you can find those things out before you even start staging it, which is very useful. But just very quickly to go back to your thing, you just got to keep trying and being very honest with people and say, well, if you do it that way, I think the character's coming across as too angry. Or if you speak that quickly, I've got an actor now in Jersey Boys who insists on doing everything at 100 miles an hour. And I have to say, and he said, well, I speak quickly. I said, but the trouble is, it's so fast now. It looks like the character is making a point, that we're making a point in the direction. So why do we speak quickly? Because we're nervous? Because we're impatient? Your character's a really calm character. He says at the end of the show, I'm the one Italian out of 100 who's not into the drama. So you can't be a dramatic person yourself. You've got to be laid back. So sometimes you just got to talk things through and just find a connection. And sometimes you don't pull it off. Sometimes it remains difficult. It does come back to just trust, I think. You've got to try and get everyone's trust. You've got to try and understand the person you're speaking to, like in real life. You've got to try and understand the other person's viewpoint to see where they're coming from and try and persuade them to do what they need to do. But sometimes it can be collaborative. I mean, I'm shifting to something else now before I forget it, but I think plays are very different to musicals.
Right.
And one of the reasons for that tends to be that generally plays run for a much shorter period of time. And when I did work, I was in the middle of working on Jersey Boys, a long-running established musical, and I went to work on Driving Miss Daisy in London with Vanessa Redgrave and James Earl Jones, and that was a play for 3 months. That was fascinating because what I realised there was that in a play over a 3-month period, they're still developing once they've opened. And also, usually, I know that's not the same for every play, but musicals tend to be incredibly tightly directed in terms of you cannot move off your number. We have numbers on the stage for lighting and danger. There's often complex sets, and I know there can be for plays as well, but generally, that's not always the case. And I remember the very first time Vanessa Redgrave suddenly went to stage right instead of stage left. My brain went, panic. I've got to fix it. But I realised that it's a different beast. It's it doesn't matter if she does that unless it matters. It damages the meaning of the scene or something. So, and I do think that just as a play is about to finish, just as a play is probably about to have the actors maybe starting to get a bit bored, it finishes and they move on to something else.
Yeah.
In a musical, even if you just do a year is a long time to do the same thing night after night after night and to keep it fresh and to keep it truthful. And some people do the Jersey Boys for the Frankie Valli was in it for 6 years.
Yeah. The first time that I had a friend who went into a West End musical, he went into Les Mis, and I just thought, oh, that's great. He'll enjoy that for a year and do something else. And he's still there now. Like since we graduated, he's been in Les Mis for 10 years. And I'm just like, wow, I'd never thought there'd be job security in theatre and acting, but here's this guy, he's worked in the same job for longer than most of my friends who don't work in theatre. So I do love that side of musicals, particularly, in the West End. Yes, it might not be the most creative process, but you do have that sense of job security that, other acting roles, rep theatre, anything like that just doesn't offer you. So that's definitely a pro and a con, I think, sometimes. My friend Dom is currently producing Bleak Expectations in town, and they have got a different A-list actor doing the lead role every 2 weeks. So it's just the amount that play is going to evolve and change depending on which name is coming in to do that part is just wild to me. I'm like, wow, that's amazing that this person's just going to come in and do it completely differently for 2 weeks, their version, and then they'll be off. It's you know, that kind of creative process is exciting and terrifying, I think, at the same time.
Yeah.
Going all the way back to the audition process, because I'd like to talk to you a little bit about auditions and the rehearsal process as well. What is it? How do you approach auditions as a director? How open-minded are you, depending on who you've got coming in? And what is the focus of the audition process for you?
Are you talking about doing a recast of an existing show or something from scratch?
Either, both.
Obviously, a long-standing show, we have a very, very good idea of the type we're looking for each role.
Yeah.
But if you're casting something new, that's quite wonderful, because it's a blank canvas that anybody can fill. And for me, I mean, the thing about, if you're going to go to auditions, it's very difficult to. I know this because I did it for so long. It's very difficult to get into the mindset of the person on the other side of the table. But yeah. I'm a human being. I want the easiest job possible. I want every person to come through that door to be perfect. Yeah. Just to be spot on. So I want you to do your best work. I want you to, be amazing. I'm not looking to find fault. I'm looking for you to make my day as easy as possible. And so, but you're looking for, well, gosh, you're looking for so much, aren't you? You're looking for talent. You're looking for, the second somebody comes in the door, my radar is on whether I think this person is a nice person, whether they're going to be a team player. And the biggest thing actually is something you alluded to earlier, which is, in an audition, be prepared to take direction, whatever it is. I mean, within reason, but whatever it is, you have to prepare in your own mind. You've got to make decisions before you come in, because you've prepared the material, but be prepared to drop it all, and be prepared for it to be completely wrong in your own mind. But what you have to do, because time is so pressing, is you have to take the note, and you've got to take the direction there and then. Yes. You'll be amazed actually how many people don't,
because they've rehearsed this material for their audition over and over and over and over, so they've come in with their way of delivering, and then you're asking them to adjust that, and they find that difficult. Is it because of repetition, or do you think it's because they're fixed on their interpretation of the piece, or what is that?
Yeah, it can definitely be because they're very set in their ways with it, or they're prepped in a certain way, or just can't get their head around it on the day, and that's another thing. You should always feel free to ask if somebody gives direction. And sometimes, if I'm very tired, I might talk gobbledygook, and I know I have, and I might just say, I'm very sorry, that was rubbish, I'll try again. But if somebody asks you to do something a second time or a third time and you don't understand what they're saying, just say very nicely, so can you just explain that again? I don't understand, because you're not going to have a chance of adjusting it. My point is that sometimes somebody might audition for me, and I might go, and then the panel next to me, the casting director, and they might go, they took your note, John. They took the direction, and that's what we're looking for. You're looking, and sometimes somebody comes in and they're doing everything absolutely perfectly.
Right.
It's very. I mean, when I say perfectly, I'm talking in terms of what I'm going to ask them to be able to do by the time of their final audition. So they're almost giving a polished performance. Now, sometimes that means they've got a friend in the show who's told them what to do.
Yeah.
But when that happens, I then sometimes will give them direction, which is nothing to do with the show, just to see if they can take direction. I don't ever play games with anybody ever, because normally that's what I want to leave it where it is. But sometimes you've just got to find out if they have learned something verbatim a certain way, and are they going to be flexible, and so I will then sometimes give them some other direction just to test that out. But you are looking for people who have got the right vocal range, the right skill set for what you need for the part. I am looking for good company members. The way that people speak to the pianist is very often a giveaway. We also know that there's nerves, that people get very nervous, and some people get a bit rude when they're nervous, and so if we're in doubt, we might ask the person who was ticking off the names at the door. We've got a bit of a vibe from that person. Oh no, they're just really terrified. Okay, that's fine.
That's interesting to know as well. Yeah.
Yeah. and other times, I mean, I know this is very advanced, but if sometimes we get a bit of a vibe about someone, we might then phone up their last employer or director or casting director and say, is there anything we should know about this person? Because you don't want, if you can avoid it, to have a presence in the company that's not going to be good.
Present,
yeah. So, but yeah, well, looking for everything. I'm looking for somebody I can enjoy working with, and hopefully it's for you actors as well. It's for you to decide whether you want to work with me as well.
I mean, I definitely felt like that in my auditions. I remember coming away and just being like, oh my goodness, the associate director is so amazing. I was like, he is such a nice person. I felt like the working relationship was fantastic. You had to step in as Evan, didn't you, for one of my auditions, because there was no Evan standing. So I ended up crying to you through the whole of So Big, So Small and holding your face. That must have been an interesting experience for you.
Anyway, I got a hug that day, so that was good. Joking apart though, Hannah, what I will say is that you're not an actor for 18 years and only to forget what it's like when you get on the other side of the table. I do think it's helpful to have done what I've done, because I will never, whenever someone comes in the room, I know that they've been up since the crack of dawn doing their hair or their makeup. I know they've probably been to pay for a pianist to play their songs and spent a lot of money. I know the travel cards a lot of money. I do remember what it's like, and I do try and treat people in a way that I would like to be treated, because it's brutal. Musical auditions are brutal generally. If you want to know, you usually just come in. You won't get a chance to have a conversation, almost certainly. It'll be, hi, how are you? What have you got for us? You say the names of 2 songs. We say, okay, the musical director will choose one. Would you go to the pianist and prep your song? You sing your song, and then very often, thank you very much, goodbye.
Yeah.
And I don't like that either. But I will try and give feedback to the casting director, make sure you hear something. But it's very tough. So, and also, you're not going to do your best work if people are rude to you,
or if you're too nervous. That's it's hard. I have always been of the opinion of like, I love this new era of being able to send in tapes, because I'm, walking into the room, you can have so much nervousness about your person that actually, if you're in your own setting, you can produce something that's your best work that actually a director can see before you come in the room. So they have a flavor of, who you are and what you're capable of without all of those nerves. Because I definitely am an actor that's affected by nerves, but it's definitely helped me as well as an actor to know that directors are human beings, in the same way that you're saying as a director, you look at the actor and you know what they're going through up until that point. My eyes were really opened when I said to you and to Jill, who was our casting director on Dear Evan Hansen, you guys must have been at this for months and you must be tired, and you both went, months? We've been at this for years. And I was just like, wow, at the end of the day, you're the panel that are sitting there from dawn until dusk on the same chair, with your cold coffee and seeing person after person after. That's exhausting as well. So I think, the actor, is there any other light you can shed on the actor director relationship from the audition process, or at any point, that is kind of a tip or a trick, from either side, from a director's side or an actor's side, just to bear in mind for the person on the other side of the fence?
Well, I think taking direction is the most important thing. That's the most important thing. Also, a silly little thing, I think probably a lot of people do this, but I think probably wear the same clothes.
Oh, interesting.
It's probably quite a good idea until the point comes. There may well come a point in the process when we might actually. I think Jill Green's very good at this. She'll go and take people aside and just say, "We think you should wear a suit for this," or give guidance to women about what sort of dress might be best for the next stage of the audition. But I don't know if it's a silly one to say, but I always wore the same clothes throughout the process. Once you've got a recall, there's obviously something they like about you, and it just helps to identify you each time, unless you're told differently. You've just got to keep listening. You've got to keep listening. I mean, I know it sounds basic, but when I'm directing an actor in the auditions, they used to do like 7 or 8 rounds before they got filmed or before they got seen for finals. So I'm trying to tell you how to get the job.
Yeah.
But this isn't just direction. I'm telling you what you need to do to get the job. So if you look at it like that, that's all you can do. That's the best you can do. And just, and be responsive. and you know, through going through recalls, you hopefully you'll have a chance to build up some sort of rapport. What I will say is, and this is again jumping to the other end. Now, I don't know what your experience has been, Hannah, but when I was an actor, I was very lucky. I think I was lucky. I either got cut straight away after the first audition and never to be seen again, or I went all the way to finals and got the job. But I was never one of those people, and I don't know how people keep going, but one of those people who go up to finals but then never get the job.
I've done it for Phantom of the Opera. I've been in finals down to the last 2-3 times. And every single time it's been, you know, the other person just pitched you to the post. And every single time I've gone, never again, because I got so far. And I always go back for more.
What I think what's important to say about that is, and I know this is, again, it's a long way in the future, but by the time you get to finals, you could all do the part. You were all there because if you're in that room, there's a chance you get picked for that role. It's just down on that occasion to who the chemistry being, however it's going to be with the director, and who he particularly chooses on that day. But nobody gets into a final unless they can do the job. Now, it's very difficult. I mean, I've had actors who keep coming in year after year for Jersey Boys. I say Jersey Boys because that's been going for so many years, and it breaks our heart. We would love them in the show. They just never, they've gone all the way each time, but never been picked by the director. And they're not doing anything wrong. They're doing everything right. You know, it's just.
I think that's really good advice for actors going into auditions as well, is to not take it personally. I've literally been told, you know, well, she was in for the last 4 years, it was just her time. Or I've been told she's slightly taller, and so that just worked better for the lead male that we've already cast, or whatever it is. I mean, it's a crude way of putting it, but I literally think of it like going to the toilet. You walk in, you do your business, and you flush and walk away and don't think about it again. That's how I approach auditions, you know, because at first I'd come home and I'd go, oh, did I do that bit right? And I'd try and analyze every second of the audition. And actually, it's better just to go in, do your best, walk away, leave, and then see if it comes back around.
Yeah. I mean, and the other thing that only comes with experiences is that you, there will come a point when you know you've done a good audition, and you've just got to suck it up. If they didn't want you that day, they didn't want you that day. It is difficult when you're starting out and you question everything, as you say. That's one of the things I do. I still have that habit from being an actor, is there's so many gaps you fill, and you get a bit paranoid if you're not careful. What did I do? This, did I do that? I mean, I try, when I'm in the room directing actors, one of the things I try and do in auditions, I try and tell them very specifically what I want or what I'm looking for. And that means that if they're smart, and I'm sure they are, that when they do go out, you should analyze every audition. You should think, you know, what did they say? What did they say? Did I do it? Did I do it? And because you know, hopefully you'll get some feedback, but you won't always. And it is wise to just, you know, think, oh, maybe I could have been a bit more angry. Maybe I wasn't angry enough. Do you know what I mean? It is healthy just to
self-reflection.
Yeah, but at the end of the day, all I'm saying is it's very difficult because I've seen the actors' faces when, you know, when there's 5 people up for one role, 4 people don't get it. And how do you explain to that actor they did nothing wrong? You did nothing wrong. You just weren't picked. You know, and it's tough. But yes, that was my question. Your question was about the process from going through auditions.
Yeah, just sort of anything that highlights sort of the actor-director relationship and how to think of it from the other person's. I'm hoping that through this conversation of, you know, me as an actor, you as an ex-actor, now a director, you know, that people are sort of getting the relationship, how it can work and what it looks like on each side of the coin. I'm going to go to the chat just because. Oh no, carry on.
I'll just give you 2 examples, both Jersey Boys, I'm afraid, but. In Jersey Boys, there's one scene, lovely scene for an actress with Frankie Valli, and on paper it looks like it's a full-out argument because he shouts at her, and it looks like she must be shouting back. So, understandably, almost every single actress that has ever come in for that role shouts and gets angry. The way in the actual show, it's the acting opposite. It's complete opposite. She has to be very calm, never rise to his bait, because that's how he behaves. He's a fiery Italian man, and she is a very calm, sophisticated lady. But most women who come in have prepped that in a certain way, and it takes a lot of unpicking. And but there's no way through it. That part has to be played in a calm manner, not an angry manner.
Would you say that really clearly in the audition? Would you say, now I want to turn that scene on its head and I don't want you to shout at all?
Yes. Yeah. Well, I've had to do it. I have had to do it to most people who've come in for 16 years, and I say there's no anger. There's no anger, and it's very difficult because I know their urge as an actress is to show I can do anger.
Yes, yeah, especially when we're constantly told give more, and I'll tell you if I need less or whatever.
Yeah. But also because the Frankie Valli actor is told to shout very nastily to her. When I'm maintaining the performance during a long run in a year, I often have the actress say to me, I say, don't get angry, don't respond. And she said, but he's really shouting at me, John. He's really, I say, I know, but she's not fazed by it. If you react, it looks like, he's threatening. He's not threatening. He's just, this is the way he is. You love him, warts and all. It's not directed at you. My point is that, you've just got to, that's completely opposite to what they're expecting to do, but that is the way it's directed in the show. And so what I'm saying is, be prepared to make an immediate change to something you've prepped, because that's what most of the actresses have to do. There's another thing I will share with you. There's a part in the show which everyone thinks is a very camp, effeminate part, and it's not supposed to be. And we had one actor who came in throughout the whole process. He kept wanting to be very camp with it, and we kept saying, no, please don't do that, and so eventually he stopped doing it. And then when the director himself came and all the producers came in for his interview, he came in for his audition and completely camp performance, and he literally, the director didn't say a word, we didn't say a word, he left the room and that was it, never even discussed. He just threw his audition, and he was very good, but he threw his audition away because that's not what we're after. We were telling him how to get the job.
It's very hard as an actor, isn't it, not to fall back into a habit of how you've done something or how it seems to be right in your head. When you get into fight and flight mode and your adrenaline's running and you're in front of a big panel, you just go into knee jerk. This is, my tendency or my bent. So have you got any tips for sort of staying calm in that situation and trying to see through your nerves and your adrenaline and listening to what the director is saying? Well,
it's just that listen to what you're being told. As I was saying it to you, when I'm directing you, I'm telling you what you have to do if you want to get the part. It's not. If I'm doing Jersey Boys or Dear Evan Hansen, it's not of my making. It's Michael Greif's. This is what Michael Greif is looking for, and you know that, Hannah.
Yeah, I do. Yeah, and Michael was not the kind of director. He was interested in play, and he loved things that the actors brought to the table that matched his vision, but he still had his vision. There was not going to be that anyone was going to do something totally outlandish opposite to his vision and him go, yeah, let's do it that way.
But I respect that, because I know how long it's taken to develop the show, and I know what it's taken for him to discover what it is he thinks makes the show a success. And I've told you this before, but I went to Toronto to watch him work, and I watched him do it line by day, sculpting. And I believe it. He knows what he knows. Go deeper, do less. It's very moving.
I remember this one scene that I was working on in Dear Evan Hansen. It's the scene where Evan is leaving Heidi and just walking out of the house, and she knows that she doesn't really have a choice in that. And when I first read the scene, she kind of tells him not to stay up too late. It's the school night, and she tells him, oh, I guess those letters have really been working. And I read it very straight. 30 times into reading it and listening to Michael give me the same note, one day I got to the end of that scene and I realized that she wasn't saying don't stay up too late. She was saying, I have no control. You're going to stay up late. You're going to do what you're going to do. And I'm just saying the things I normally say to make myself feel comfortable. And when she says, oh, those letters are really helping, she knows in that moment that he's not been writing those letters at all. And it was suddenly, when that realization hit me, I then sobbed through the scene. And Michael, for the first time, that was the first time I got the note saying, she now understands what this scene is about. And that was a massive, moment for me. But no, there was no amount of telling me to cry here or do this. or she doesn't mean that when she says it, that would have helped me. There was a level of, you know, gentle teasing and repetition that had to take place for me to come to that realization myself. And then when it happened, I was like, I found it, and I could feel it in the scene, and Evan could feel it in the scene, and it was magic. And it's just sort of finding that balance, isn't it, between taking direction and, you know, understanding it, not understanding it.
It is very difficult. And what I will say, having worked on for so many years on American shows, is I'm not sure they would admit this, but by the time you come to be in your final audition, they are looking, whether it's realistic or fair or not, they're looking for a polished performance. They're looking for the end product. And we all know that you know, it's an audition. You know, you're doing it just to get into the rehearsal room to learn these things, like
find out. Yes.
And you know, lots of things do take 4 weeks to work out, and some things even once you've opened, you're still making discoveries. You know, but the Americans are very demanding. They need to see it, that you can get there. During the auditions, and that's not always the case. I mean, some of the productions I've cast, I've directed, I'm looking for potential. I'm looking for people who are going to be fun to work with, and, you know, we'll explore this together. You don't have to have the finished product yet, because I don't know what the finished product is yet.
I love that side to directing as well, to knowing that you have a director in front of you. The first time I experienced it, I was scared, because in the auditions, he knew what he wanted. But then when we got into the rehearsal process, it was like, he literally opened the first day of rehearsal. So what do you think we should do with this scene? And I was just like, you're the director, you tell me. I found it terrifying. The further I've gone on in my career, I'm like, actually now that would be an exciting prospect, because I would come to the table with ideas. But, you know, at first I was terrified by that thought of, you know, being part of the collaborative and the creative process.
Yeah, but just to answer your question about how to control, I suppose, audition nerves, we were sort of getting towards.
Yes.
Obviously breathing, physically calm your breathing down, in through the nose. Just calm yourself down, but also get back into the material. Get back into the material. Hopefully you've been well rehearsed by the time you get to your final auditions, so that you just can connect with the material and the character, and that's usually how you control nerves. You know, I get actors occasionally get stage fright, and the only way I think you can get into it is to get back into forgetting about the audience, forgetting about where you actually get back into the character and the text again. And I remember when I was in the original cast of Copacabana for Barry Manilow, and I was talking to him and his co-writer once after I got the job, and they were talking about things like this. And they said, you know, and if you're struggling with your singing or something, they said, always get inside the lyric. Get inside the lyric, and in other words, it'll make you act better, and you'll be absorbed by that, and hopefully periphery nerves and all that stuff will get. There's not room for it, because you're inside the character and you're concentrated, focused on that. Yeah.
Okay, I'm just going to go through the questions that we've got in the chat box here. There's some good ones. So Byron asks, are there ways as directors, and Byron is our musical director for our Hampshire branch, that you can give a note in a way that helps an actor say thank you for it? Is there a way that you deliver notes that can help actors be appreciative of that note rather than finding it a criticism?
I think the best way to get that is when you've made it successful for them. So, like Hannah's just given you a very good example. She suddenly had a light bulb moment. Now, sometimes that can be very quick. Sometimes it can take a long time. But it's that they are the best moments, is when somebody gets what you're talking about. So to get a thank you, I'm not bothered about getting a thank you. I love seeing somebody recognize how much better I've made them, not because it's me, but because I think it's us, but how much better we have made their performance. So I think you've just got to, once you've found a way to communicate with each particular actor, and they very often, we all need different things. I quite like bluntness. I actually do pussyfoot around some people, and then eventually, if that's not working, I will get quite blunt. Some people I'm just very blunt with, because they say, "Tell me how it is." Is there a way to give notes? Well, I hopefully always be kind. I think that the biggest bugbear for all of us is repeat notes. And I think I'm aware that sometimes my frustration, I do have to check myself sometimes if I'm getting really annoyed because I've told this actor a long time, I've got to be very careful I don't get angry with the actor because they may not understand my frustration, and then they may think I'm just a nasty person being horrible. But repeat notes are a bugbear for all of us because we don't want repeat notes. I don't want to. I don't want to be
say everything.
Yeah,
well, time.
I also don't want to make your life misery either. But so Byron, I don't know if I'm answering your question properly. I suppose approach everything with kindness and understanding. Try not to be telling people off. Try to make a suggestion, but it's about finding the way to connect. Sometimes it's about you'll discover that the actors find it difficult as themselves because there's something about themselves in their past life or in their lives that they're reluctant to let go of a certain emotion. And they might get, because you have a nice little chat with them. I think chatting to actors is very good.
I was going to say one of the things that seems to be quite apparent is very much a personal conversation with an actor rather than a group just firing off notes to people. And that's something that is useful to incorporate and to know ahead of time to incorporate into rehearsals and things generally.
That's a very, very good point. Something that I do now, and I don't even think about it, is I don't find group notes always very useful. And Hannah, you will know this, the way I operate. I hardly ever gave group notes on Dear Evan Hansen, unless there are certain times when it's very useful. Sometimes it's useful to give a generic note about something we're all doing as a company, energy levels or something like that. But what I've tended to find, this is probably my own personal response to notes, there are some directors who put the fear of God into you. So when you're going around, Jon Emmanuel, oh God, what are they going to say? What are they going to say? I can remember that now, and because I've worked with directors who mimic you in front of the rest of the cast, and they'll get everybody laughing at your performance. That is not the way to go. If you got everybody fearful of making a choice because tomorrow night before the show, the director's going to make everybody laugh at what you did last night. I saw that happen once in a brand new West End show I was in. And we did a tryout in Plymouth first, and we'd done many, many, many previews. And we did many previews a couple of weeks in London. On the night before, I think the director must have had a panic, and he humiliated our lead actor. And he humiliated a couple of other principals who were doing things they'd done for the entire preview period, and suddenly started mocking the way they were using their voices and started mimicking their voices, and everybody was laughing at them. And guess what? Their confidence was destroyed for opening night. And so, yes, I do personally, Byron, find it better to find the time to go and speak to actors privately when there's no ego. You know, some people don't like to be told a note in front of other people for various reasons. Sometimes if an actor, and sometimes you get some actors who are messing around or not taking things seriously, or everybody is being wound up by a certain actor because they're selfish or something like that. Sometimes I do think it is necessary to give that note in front of the entire company so the entire company knows you are addressing it. I think because sometimes some of these things need to be said. But I personally, group notes is great for if you're doing, just before, doing dress rehearsals and stuff like that, you have to do group notes. But if you're really failing to get a performance that you really want to get, then I think you have to go the extra mile and have a dialogue with the actor behind the scenes privately, where there's no ego involved. It's just a chance for them to tell you how they really feel. And for you to maybe say, sometimes you have to get quite tough. I need you to do this tonight. But it's my job to make you comfortable about doing that and understand why I'm asking you to do it. So yes, I think a personal approach gets you further personally.
That's amazing. Thank you so much.
Thank you. So Erica asks, do you have any advice for directing work you've written as a first-time director? So Erica's actually written a piece that is going to be staged for the first time with a full company in June. So RicNic is the producer, the acting producer. We've got Work in Progress Theatre Company that we're working with as the production and directing team. So what advice do you have for her directing brand new, fresh work that she, it's freshly written. It's kind of still even, they've been making script adjustments and things. How do you go about directing a piece like that?
That's a brilliant question, and well done, you talented thing, Erica. That's amazing. It's a really good question. I've often been in a room, and I've seen. I've been in workshops for shows, and I've done tryout shows where some writers are absolutely entrenched and will not change things that the director has suggested, and those projects have disappeared and gone away because I think because they've not been open to change. At the end of the day, it's your vision, Erica. It's your vision, and it's your own personal integrity. You've written a piece because it meant something to you. So there's going to come a line in the sand where you're going to go, no, I'm not changing anything or listening to somebody else's opinions. But if you're directing it as well, fascinating. That's going to be fascinating for you. I would say, try and approach it with an open mind, and it may well be, if you have a trusting group of actors whose opinion you do trust, they may say, I don't think I'd say it like this. I think I might say it like that, and you might agree, and you might learn something as an actor, or as a director, or as a writer, particularly. I would approach it really with a really open mind and see if there's something you can learn from your actors as well. But at the end of the day, good for you, directing and writing. I mean,
written it a little bit.
But the wonderful thing about that is that you're going to know the piece inside out from a completely deep place, and you're going to know the answers to all those questions that if a director normally has to do his preparation and dramaturgy and social context, and the director needs to be the most smart person in the room normally, so they can answer everyone's questions, and there'll still be questions that you can't answer. It's amazing. But I would say if you're interested in learning in both roles, be open, but be prepared to things you're not prepared to change if you feel strongly about. But just allow yourself the possibility that maybe other people may have some good ideas, and it can be truly collaborative.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Pleasure. Good luck. Amazing.
And Erica also asked, how would you suggest working with a large cast of 30 plus members? I don't know, Erica, do you want to talk about why you came to that question?
So when Jen first approached myself and Josh about putting on Where the Bees Fly with RicNic, it was a 10-person show. And she asked if we could expand it to have an ensemble and lots of kind of supporting characters, so we could have a cast of 30 plus. And after I kind of sat down with our creative team and went, oh my God, what do we do with this? And we rewrote the show, and actually I had to rewrite the second half. I kind of realized that I've done some music directing before, and I conduct some ensembles, but I have never directed something before. My experience is largely as an actor.
Right.
And I'm just not sure how to kind of manage a rehearsal space with that many people in, or to kind of set people off on tasks. And we don't have a lot of rehearsal time. We're going to be kind of online doing the table reads, which you discussed earlier. And then we've got a week of kind of intensive rehearsals in the May half term, and then we're doing a tech, and then we've got the show.
And are you obliged to call all the people for all the calls?
I wasn't thinking so now. I was thinking, because the auditions are on the 1st of April, and we're going to cast fairly soon after that, so that we can kind of hit the ground running doing stuff on Zoom. And then we won't call everyone for that, but for the intensive kind of rehearsals, I was thinking I would call everyone. And kind of, because I have an assistant director as well, and we were thinking we could have kind of delegation and things.
Oh, well, if you've got an assistant director, that's definitely, if you've got 2 spaces, can you find 2 spaces?
Yeah, Hannah, sorry, silly question. We are rehearsing in the building, aren't we? So we would be able to.
Yes, we are. Yeah, you will be. We've actually got Owen here who works at the Lamp as well. So hi, Owen.
Hello.
And Owen's got our next question. But yeah, it's hard managing sort of large groups, isn't it? So yes, I guess that's a question about the space and where you'll be rehearsing. But how would you manage it sort of timetable wise, John? Before I get to Owen's question, when you've got 30, are you and a restricted rehearsal period?
Well, I don't know if I'm understanding it totally. I mean, you usually only call the people you're going to be working with that session, because obviously you're wasting other people's time. In terms of very simple things like management of a room, absolute silence in the room while you're working, which is 30 people is a lot of people. But that's how things can get out of control. There's lots of talking, and you've got to be prepared to say, we're rehearsing now, quiet please, or we'll have a stage manager to do that, or whatever. Also, I don't know if this really answers the question, but as soon as you can, have a good group chat to the company and explain to them why you've written this piece. Share your passion for the piece with everybody that's going to be in it, and try and make it special to them, so they feel special as well, and hopefully you will convey that passion to the others. That's something I try and do when I'm directing. I hope, Hannah, that it meant as much to me to get you brilliant as it did for you, because
absolutely, yeah, absolutely.
I find that really rewarding. And if you've written this yourself, you must feel incredibly connected to it, and it must be very, very special. You've got to convey that to everybody else, and maybe explain the background to it, and why you came to write it, and why it's important, and how the sort of atmosphere you're trying to create with this in this production, and how you'd like the audience to feel by the interval, or how you want the audience to feel by the time they leave the building. What you hope to have shared or made them learn, or whatever. Just to share that your own commitment with other people to inspire them, and make sure that they feel that they got something to live up to as well. Yes, if you can, if it makes sense to rehearse something in another room with your assistant director, that might make it more privacy. I don't know the piece, so I don't know. Are you talking about the logistics of 30 people, or?
Yeah, I'm not sure kind of how to. I went to shadow the director of a production in Derby a couple of weeks ago, which had a massive cast, and it was bilingual. It was English language and BSL.
Right, brilliant.
And that was really interesting to watch in terms of management, but I'm not sure how to kind of do that.
Well, I mean, obviously, the more people you have sitting around not being used, that would be tricky, because they're not being occupied. So you need to try and keep everybody occupied as much as possible. But as soon as, are the 30 people in every scene, or presumably not?
No.
So maybe just rehearse the piece, and then as soon as they can see a run through as well, so they can see what they're part of, that will hopefully make everybody more cohesive. I'm not sure I'm answering your question though.
No, I think you are. I think it would be maybe, like the table read obviously is going to involve everyone. Those Zoom rehearsals get everyone to understand the overall piece. But then you could probably break it down into, right, this day we're just going to work with our leads and get these scenes done. And then we're going to do the big ensemble numbers, so that, like say on Monday, you're just not going to call any of that big ensemble. They're only going to come in on, say, Tuesday and Wednesday. You're going to nail these big pieces. And then you're not having to manage lots of people sort of waiting around and doing what actors do, which is usually get grumpy when they're waiting around.
Yeah, that's the biggest problem. Also, if you're going to do a read through on the first day where everyone is there, that's nice, because they can all meet each other and hear the piece.
Yeah.
If that's the sort of thing you do, I don't know.
Yeah.
Okay, so Owen's question, in terms of casting, what would you advise is the best format for the audition day? How can I best understand a performer's ability from a solo audition? Our current format is workshop auditions and then solo auditions for those wishing to audition for a lead role. And we work with young people aged 7 to 18.
Right, is this musical or?
Owen,
I completed a bit of both musical and play, but this one particularly is musical.
Right. Well. Okay. So, hi, Owen. Nice to see you. Well, obviously, the vocal is with a musical is the most important thing. because if they can't hit the notes, they can't do that. So I think, what we do, our format is usually we ask people to bring 2 songs. Usually on the first round, you only hear 1, but we always ask people to sing a song of their own choosing, but in the style of the period. Usually that should tell us enough about whether we see them in our show or not, but also should indicate to a musical supervisor or director what their type of voice they've got. If their song doesn't cover the range required for some of the parts, we'll do scales with them to test those bits out. And then recalls would then involve sending material from the show gradually, more and more scenes and then songs from the show. How do you? Sorry, you said you have group auditions, do you?
Yeah, so we'll have a group audition where they'll do a main song, and they'll do some dancing and some singing, and do some small group acting workshops to see their style. But we find it very awkward to be able to cast a show, and usually we only have 1 day to do the auditions as well. So it's hard to understand their performing ability and know, especially with the younger cast, how far to go with challenging them with different styles, different emotions and things, and to try and word that in a way that doesn't affect their confidence either.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, I suppose if you're trying to ascertain all their skill set, I suppose it's not too challenging to ask them to memorize a short paragraph or something. It can be very, very short. There's a lot of them, and that'll give you a good idea of their acting, and probably as you're already doing, hear them sing something that's going to show their ability to do what they need to in your show, and any dancing as well. It's in the way that went damage confidence. I think just always be very, very kind and just say that was, be very encouraging. I always try and find victories. My dad always said something, always try and catch people doing something right, which is, which is good advice. So I love the way you did the first part of that, because it was really, quiet and gentle. But I'd love you to be a bit more angry, and if you try being a bit more angry, try and think of it from positives and not using negative language. Say, I'd love a bit more of that, or could you do a bit less of that? Because I think it's much more moving. Do you see what I mean? I think sometimes it's a good question, this, because I don't think about it, but I think I often tell people how they make me feel. And as a gauge of success. Said, well, cool, when you did that, it made me feel really frightened, or it made me feel really, and that's what I'm after,
I suppose that helps them understand with saying how they should characterize that character or that particular bit of dialogue. Is that made me feel this way, and that was a good thing. So to do more of that moving forward. Yeah. Okay.
I think it's trying to think about what would get the most out of you if someone was doing it to you. But confidence is a very delicate thing, even at our level, Hannah.
Yeah, it really is.
I spend a lot of my time with understudies, particularly. You've got to fight your battles at the right time. You've got to pick your moments. Today, I'm just going to try and achieve this towards getting a character, because I don't want to damage confidence. Layering is a very important thing in directing, I think. You don't have to get everything straight away. You've just got to find successes, make a success in this first week. I just want to understand who the character is this week, or we'll get the volume another time, or we'll get like the tears.
Yes.
Just keep saying, at this point we would like you to be crying if you can, because it's so much more powerful. But don't worry about it for now. Just get your moves right and the lines right. I think positive. What's the positive? Positive comments always, if you can, just praise the success and say, I'd love more of that, or try a bit less of that, rather than making them feel bad about what they've done. I think it's like anything. I remember I've got a thing about maths now, because I was shamed in a maths class when I was 11. I was made a fool of. If you make a fool of somebody, they're not going to feel able to express themselves. If you know that already, don't you? But does that help?
Absolutely. This is a crazy story, but I remember I used to just need a wee so desperately in all my ballet exams as a child. And I remember having to leave an exam to go. And I remember the following week being in my ballet class and being asked a question. And I thought I knew the answer. I put my hand up and the teacher said, yes, Hannah. And I gave the wrong answer. And instead of gently coaching me into the right answer, she went, oh, Hannah, go and have another wee. And I remember the shame that came over my body. And that was the day, like at the age of 7, that I was like, if I'm ever in a position of responsibility over another human being, I will never use that as a tactic. I will never, use shame as a, or almost punishing someone because they didn't get it right kind of thing. Or making fun of someone. I think whether you're a child or whether you're an adult, that it just has such a massive effect on you, doesn't it?
Yeah, I think also, Owen, I think I'm talking to myself as much as anything here. I think even I have to be very careful. If I'm frustrated because I'm not getting what I want, it's my fault. It's not the actor's fault. It's good. That's how I have to approach it. It's me. I'm not communicating well enough. Now, eventually there comes a point where sometimes it's not me, but I think it's just, we're asking people to bare their souls and bare their talent, and it's a big thing, and I actually think I really mean this, but when you're sat on an audition panel and you're saying about coming in for an audition, I think it's a privilege that people come to audition for you, actually. It's amazing that we don't sit there and nobody comes. But they've chosen to share their talent with you. So we should be showing people respect for that and grateful for it. But yeah, I think just always speak to an actor with respect, because they're probably thinking of 100 things.
Yeah.
And I'm very nervous as well. So
that feeds really nicely into Ariel's question. How would you suggest helping actors when outside influences have been stressing them out? So you've got an actor that's come into work and they're just, I know I had a couple of days with this, I got to the end of a scene and you were like, what went wrong? And I was like, I didn't feel in myself that I had given anything different to any other day, but because obviously of what had happened at home before I came in, it had massively affected my performance in that particular rehearsal process. So how do you sort of approach an actor when they turn up at work and it's got nothing to do with the process, but they're just not in the right place to be able to work or to do what it is you need them to do?
Well, when would I be aware of that? When I saw their performance, or before a performance they suddenly say, John, I can't perform today? What?
Yeah, maybe I guess you wouldn't know. I mean, how, if an actor isn't giving you what you need, how do you go about finding out if it's an outside influence or whether it is the process that's causing the obstacle?
Well, discussion, the private discussion, like Byron was saying, that is the joy. It's something I do, and maybe other people do this as well, is that if I can, it wasn't so easy at the Noel Coward Theatre, but if I can, if I'm watching a show, I go and stand in the wings so that every actor, as they leave the stage, goes past me after a performance, so they know I've been there. They know I'm there. They can grab me, or so there's somebody that they can speak to. And also warm-ups, very useful to be at warm-up if you can, or there's all sorts of ways you can be in touch with actors now: text messages, phone calls, FaceTime, all sorts of things I can offer. We've got an actor now joining Jersey Boys. He's going to open on Friday. I've said to him, if you want to FaceTime, talk about the dramaturgy, I'm happy to do that. There is an element, I think, of therapy in the nicest possible way of working with actors, because everybody's a human being. They're not robots. Everybody's got stuff. And I do get to know actors as well as they would like me to get to know them. It's their choice. But I think the answer to your question, Hannah, is if you're struggling with anything that's just taking you away from the performance, I think the only way you can possibly get back into it is to get back to the material. Yeah, you've just got to think about what you're saying. There's no other way. I think you've got to be so focused on what you're doing that nothing else matters. And I know that's not always easy. I've had a very blessed life and not had too many problems till recently, and I now know what it's like. It's very hard. It's very, very hard.
Walk into work and leave everything else at the door.
Yeah, it is, but it is your job to work on the material. And I think the more, it's like anything, isn't it? The more you throw yourself into an activity, the more focus and concentration you've got. I can't see any other way of approaching it. That will force other things to the back of your mind, I think, in the right way. I mean, we're going to all sorts of other territory, possibly because I have dealt with actors with mental health issues and I've had actors in the interval tell us they can't do act 2. And that's very distressing for everybody. And you've just got to reassure people. And, you know, sometimes people put unrealistic demands on themselves. And I've had actors in the past say, I can't perform tonight. Why is that? Because I can't give you 100%. And I will usually say to the actor, with your voice, we just need 80%. and they go, oh, what do you mean? I said, well, and then we'll talk to this is a specific thing, but, there's ways you can get through a performance as Frankie Valli. If you pull back on this bit, pull back on that. We don't need you to give that we can cover you in other ways. This bit needs to be 100%, this bit, but other things, there's ways around it. And some people do put a lot of pressure on themselves, and I can relieve that pressure. I can say, don't worry about it. I'll tell you if it's not enough, as you know, Dear Evan Hansen required a lot of emotion from actors. And sometimes an actor would say, I'll say, Sam Tutty, John, I couldn't cry tonight. And you go, Sam, it doesn't matter, because you were there for us, for the audience that they don't know that you sometimes cry at that point. As long as you're emotionally connecting and you're looking shameful and feeling the feelings, it's fine. Yeah. I'm trying to encourage people to be positive, and there are days that people have a lot of trouble. I don't think I can sing today, and all those sorts of things. So, I think it's my job to get the performance on the stage. So I think I would have to, be mindful of what you're going through. Appreciate you sharing that with me, and then try and encourage you to think about the character and think about the script. I don't think there's any other way.
No, that's a perfect answer. I think as an actor as well, that's how I would want to be helped in that situation. Just listen to, and then actually Dr. Theatre will fix it. Let's get to the script.
Yeah.
Emma asks, as a director, how do you find the confidence in your ideas? In that, is this going to work? Is this right? Is it more trial and error? You have an idea and you try it with actors, and if it doesn't work, you change it? Or do you plan ideas before? How much do you change your ideas and come up with things on the spot? And do you sometimes see your initial ideas completely change to what you originally thought would work? And how often does that happen?
Yes to all those things. Yeah, absolutely. And I tell you, I think I said this earlier, one of the best things that happens to me when I'm directing is when somebody else comes up with a better idea than mine. I love it. Because it's somebody else, we all lateral thinking. We all think outside the box sometimes, and someone comes up with a better idea. Yes, I think, if there's something like Erica's going to find out, if there's something you really want to do, then you must do it. You must find out if it works in front of an audience, and it's ultimately, it's your decision. But I'd say always be open. I mean, I hope you don't get into a situation where everyone on the stage tells you your idea is bad and they won't do it. I suppose that could happen as well, but you've just got to all listen to each other. And I've got a couple of actors at the moment, and this hasn't really happened before, but in Jersey Boys, who have refused to do the direction. Now, that's really unwise. I can't really, it hasn't really ever happened before. So a lot of people can't do it. That's a different thing. And that leads to frustration. But I think you, as the director, you are entitled to say, will you please try it? Please try it. I want to see whether I'm right or wrong. I don't think you should get into a situation like that, really, because I do love, it's going to be a bit of everything, isn't it, to answer your question. There are some things you're going to want to stick to your guns on because it's something you wanted to do for the last 6 years and you are determined to see it on stage. But yeah, if you were to find out it doesn't work in performance, then be prepared to change it. Be prepared that somebody else might have a better idea. Be prepared that the idea that you've always dreamt of is a bad idea. You know, I often think that about writers. There must be writing dialogue. is a very fine skill, I think. You know, you can write how you think people speak, and then you actually hear them speak it. Oh, that's clunky. It doesn't. People don't speak like that. That must be one of the first things you have to learn about writing, I imagine. So I think be prepared to stick to your guns to things you really want to do because it's your vision, but be prepared to be collaborative and explore. It may well be that your first idea sparks a much better idea because someone bounces off it and, oh, let's try this, let's try that, and before you know it, it's evolved into something magnificent. So was that all your question? Did I answer?
Perfect. I remember when we were training at the Royal Academy of Music, one of the first workshops we did, which I found so bizarre, was we were sitting in a circle and given a lump of Play-Doh, and we were just told to create something from this lump of Play-Doh, and we've spent a good 15 minutes, you know, doing it. And then they were like, now pass it to someone else. They're going to adjust it. They're going to change it. They're going to tweak it. And we were all like, no. And they were like, and this is the creative process, everyone. You have to be willing to like bring this baby to life and then pass it to someone else who's going to bend that bit, change that bit, to put that bit off. And it's agonizing, but it's amazing as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think I've got quite a good comedic idea of things, but sometimes you get it wrong. Sometimes that idea, oh, it doesn't work, or what is difficult. So who asked that question? Was it Beth?
That was Emma.
Oh, Emma. I mean, sometimes you know, an idea that you thought was really classy, everyone else thinks is really cheesy, and that's quite tricky.
Yeah.
Or really corny or something. So you know, it's but one thing I had a lot is that what I do is the DSM, who is running the script next year in a professional show. I don't know if you got one as well. I do quite often ask their opinion as we go along on the quiet. I say, what do you think of that? You know,
Right.
And I do
Stage
that.
manager.
I do that. Sorry.
The stage manager.
Well, or the DSM, so the deputy stage manager who's on the book. I will often say, get their opinion, because I'll do that for two reasons. A, because I genuinely want to know, but also because I do like to encourage, and this is my own insecurity, I like to encourage a room where everyone feels like they can say what they want within reason, because I'd rather them say it to my face than start doing that behind the scenes and start getting negative and festering. And sometimes it's nice someone to say, yeah, it's nice to hear someone say, yeah, that is a really good idea you just had there, John, you know, or, you know, because, and sometimes the DSM is the only person there who can be your friend. Having said that, I worked in theatres. I had some very nice letters from theatre managers, which was weird because they said they loved the way that I took everyone's opinions on board.
Really?
But was always prepared to go my own way. But I think that's something I do. I like to know. I like people to say aloud what they're thinking, so that we don't have backbiting. There always probably will be naysayers and stuff, but I try not to be so insecure that I stop people saying how they feel. I like, you know, say it aloud, and we can talk about it and sort it. You know.
Perfect. Okay, so Eleanor asks, how would you go about going into the directing career field after studies? Is it best to just get experience as an actor first and then apply or become a sort of assistant helper until you're comfortable enough to pursue becoming a director? How would you go about becoming an assistant and learning through another director?
I would say if you really want to be a director, then just do direction. And that would mean getting experience any way you possibly can. Am I glad I was an actor first? Yes, I am. But I'm well aware, I'm well aware there are people in this profession who have always wanted to be a director. They've done a directing course at drama school, and fair play to them. You know, I'm sort of a hybrid. I'm not directing my own work very often. I probably need to develop an ambition to do that, but I'm very happy learning what I'm learning, the way I'm learning it, and working with people like Michael Greif and Des McAnuff. I want to see how they work, you know. So I would say, if you really want to direct, then just direct, and anywhere you possibly can, on any level, anywhere, because, you know, when you do something, write a letter off, you can, to be able to say, I'm doing this at the moment, or if you were to get an interview, getting an interview is a tricky bit usually, but to always be able to say that you've done something in that field, or this is what I'm doing at the moment, or this is my experience, anywhere, anything, because everyone's going to start somewhere. We all know that, but I think it's valuable having been an actor first. Yes, I do, but it can't. I'm sure it's not the only way. I think I bring things. I think I possibly, arguably, bring a bit more humanity to it than somebody that maybe has not been an actor. But that's by no means a general rule. It's just I think I know how actors think, and I know how sensitive I can be, and I know how sensitive actors can be. We've already talked about this, you know. But I think how to get just keep writing to people, to keep writing to directors. I was asked a question. I had an interview for a directing job the other week, and I know it's a general one with the producer, and they said, "Really good question. What directors would you like to work with?" Because I don't, you know, because they know I'm working as an associate director. Really good question. Who would I like to work with? So have some of those answers in your head. Go and find work that you really admire. Be able to name a production or 2 or 3 that have really inspired you and why you wanted to become a director. Have those questions. I'm sort of leaping ahead now to the interview stage, but know why you want to do what you want to do. Know things that have inspired you. Know people that have inspired you, and then write to those people. Write to those companies. Write to anywhere that does direction, and beg and say, "I'll do it for nothing. I just want the experience," or "Can I come and watch you directing?" Like some of you have already said you've done.
Yes, because then the next letter that you write, you can say, "I've spent 2 weeks working alongside so-and-so," and all that you've done it then. You've got the first link in the chain.
Yep. Success breeds success. Anything, just keep pushing away and get some experience somewhere of what you want to do, so you can tell people you've done it, or "I've worked with so-and-so." And if you do get to watch, I don't know, I'm going to say Matthew Warchus. Let's say you got to watch Matthew Warchus. You then write to Matthew Warchus, say, "You couldn't write me a letter to say I did this with you, could you?" And then you got a letter from Matthew Warchus. Do you know what I mean? Or whoever it is. So just get contacts as well.
Yeah, that was a piece of advice I was given at the Royal Academy of Music when I first studied, which was golden, which was that keep your connections with everyone that you meet on this course, because half of the people on that course now are no longer actors. They're auditioning me on panels. They're casting directors, they're agents, they're directors. Keep all of your connections and be kind to everybody, because you never know who, you know, the whatever kid on your drama course that isn't that successful as an actor, you never know what he is going to end up doing, you know, or he might get your acting headshot in front of his face in 10 years time and go, "No, they didn't treat me very well," you know. So it's really important to all the way through to foster your connections and treat them really well.
Absolutely right. Yeah.
So we've only got a couple more people's questions left now. We've got Lydia and Harriet. I know it's we're running late, but we're having such a good time. Lydia says, "How do you suggest an actor finds their character and understands who they are and their aims? How can a director nurture this? Also, do you find it useful when directing to follow techniques of practitioners or not at all?"
Okay. I'm going to put a bit of a disclaimer tonight. You've got to bear in mind that everything I say is just my experience and my opinion. I'm probably not your normal director. I'm an associate director mostly. I was an actor, so I can only give you my own opinion and my experience. I personally don't rely on any acting techniques at all, and that is purely because in most of the work that I do, it's about getting a piece of work up on its feet as quickly as possible and recreating a production that's already existing. So Jersey Boys and Dear Evan Hansen, whatever like that. If anyone has a technique, I will definitely respect it, that they would want to use it. And it's not something I ever studied either. So it's not something I know much about. In terms of building a character, obviously all the obvious things are there. Read the entire script and look for any reference to your character that anybody else says about the character. If there's any if it's a truthful, factual piece of work and it's a real person, then there's research as much as you possibly can. Dramaturgy is a thing that's used a lot in American shows. Jersey Boys has got a dramaturgy Bible, which is it's that thick.
What do you mean by dramaturgy? Just for anyone who's never...
Dramaturgy is it's they actually employ professional dramaturgs. They're called dramaturge, and they on Jersey Boys for the first 3 days we sat down with the dramaturge and we just all sat around the table like a table read, and we read page after page after page of excerpts from books. We watched video clips of the real Four Seasons. We watched video clips of rock and roll and the progression of gospel music into rock and roll music, and how that was sort of pinched and developed, and how Frankie Valli and Four Seasons, how their sound came into being. Elvis Presley, all those things. Like it's absorbing the social context of the period. When we talk about owing £1 million in those days, what's it in real money now? Just so you understand what it was like to be back in that period. What was the social context? What was happening in civil rights movements in America? What was happening to black singers? What was happening to white singers? What was happening to the segregation? Understanding, what it was like to be in that period. So you've got a deep understanding of the story you're telling, and I think I'm the only person in the country who can do it now. But I do the dramaturgy for Jersey Boys. It gives an ownership. Rather than just being stand here, say this, it just makes you understand that these people were second generation Italians, and their parents were the ones that came over and only spoke Italian. But there's a very close connection still to the Italian population in New York. But these guys are breaking out from that, and they're changing their names because there was prejudice against Italians. And do you know what I mean? And so Frankie Valli's, his name was Castelluccio, but there was a lot of prejudice against immigrant singers, so he changed it to make it more American. Frankie Valli, simplified, it sounded like he wasn't from Italy. So it's all those things. So you've got to take as much as you can from the period in which it's set. If you're doing a truthful piece, so dramaturgy is knowing everything about the period you're in and all about the actual people you're portraying, and how else to build a character. Well, hopefully a director will have made a lot of decisions for you before you start as well. And I would like to think that a director would have a lot of ideas to help you out, a deep understanding of it. But most directors want to hear what you have to say as well and see what you think, so that you do it together. I honestly think the best relationship between director and actor is absolute collaboration. And having that external eye. The purpose of a director is to edit and to advise you against good choices and bad choices, and whether they fit the whole piece or not. What was the rest of the question, Hannah?
Do you find it useful when directing to follow techniques of practitioners? But the first part of the question was how you help an actor to find the character and understand what the character's aims are.
I think it's table work. Is the best way, is to, before you even start trying to do the external performance, is to discuss the scene, each scene by scene, and do all those basic things. What does the character want in this scene? What is the character, how does the character change from the beginning of the scene to the end of the scene? Does the character get what they want? Discuss their needs and aims, and then start to think about their offstage life. I think that's the key to it. Give us an idea physically. I think physical theatre is very important. I think you should be able to look at an actor on stage, and before they've even opened their mouths, know a lot about them, a lot about their confidence, their status. Think about their physicality. Think what they would wear. And it's not silly to think about what do they have for breakfast, what sort of meals they have, what do they eat, what do they do in their spare time, what do they do when they walked off that scene just then, where did they actually go, where are they coming from, have they got allergies, think about things like that, their health, their day-to-day health. Does that affect how they walk? Are they fast speakers? If so, why? Are they nervous? Do they speak quickly, or do they speak slowly? Confident, high status people speak usually very slowly because they're used to nobody can possibly interrupt them. Whereas somebody who's a bit nervous and used to being interrupted speaks very quickly in case someone takes their point of view very seriously. Think about the rhythm of that person in their own lives. Things like that.
Yeah, rhythm and wants, I think, are two really important things when you're looking at a character. what is the want, as you're saying, and then how does that inform the rhythm of what I'm doing? I remember the first time that you spoke to me in the audition about the fact that Cynthia was a much more kind of what we would call in this country, say, middle class and privileged, as opposed to Heidi. You know, first reading the script, you might think, oh, these are just two mums. But actually, when you put them in the context of financially, where are they at? Relationally, where are they at? You know, one's coming from a place of privilege, the other one's coming from a place of, you know, having to fight for everything she's got. It just makes a massive difference to how you play that character.
I think
okay.
Heidi, when I used to watch some of those Heidi scenes, I used to actually visualize, you know, because she was so impatient with Evan, because, you know, why haven't you eaten this food? I've left you £5 on the, or, you know, $10 to buy a pizza last night. I need you to do this because I haven't got the time to get the food for you myself. It's stressing me out. I used to I could see a room next door full of ironing up to the ceiling. I could see a kitchen full of plates and stuff. I could see her not having enough time because she had all her thesis. I could just see
the jobs and yeah. Okay, so last question. So Harriet says, hello, thank you so much for your time. Number one, I am looking to develop skills around analysis of text and of an existing piece. Can you advise on this, and how can one best break down a new text or new to the director text?
How can you break down a new text? I think you probably have to read it over and over again and see what resonates with you, what you think is important about it. I think usually a new show these days has got to have, well, it probably has always had to have as much relevance to today as possible. I mean, it's quite spooky how relevant Shakespeare still is. I mean, it's, you know, politics and power and greed and love, they're all still human conditions. So how to break down a text? Yes. Think about what's important. How does it relate to today? Does it have a message for a modern day audience? Is there anything, you know, I mean, a farce is a farce. There isn't usually any deep social comment about it. The purpose is just to make people laugh because of physical situations. But I think if you, I'm not sure I totally understand the question, but I think try and find something that's relevant to today's audience. And
how would you break the text down if it's new to you? How do you go about sort of, how am I going to direct this piece? How do I?
Well, I think something that leaps to my mind is I have read quite a few books by directors, and they said, and I think this is, I actually understand what this sounds like a cop-out, but I actually understand what they mean. Don't be afraid not to have all the answers.
Right.
That's something I make very clear to people. I'm not, as long as I've prepped properly and I've know basically what I want to do, I'm not afraid of looking silly if I don't know all the answers, because sometimes I want everyone in the room to come up with the answers with me. And I trust that if you cast a piece well, and if you've got good people around you, you know, you may well find that when you get paired with a designer, and when you're trying to break down a scene and trying to work out how shall I stage this, they come up with 10 different brilliant reasons. You go, thank you. That's their job. Their job is, and they want to make you happy like that. And that's, and everyone has got a part to play to make the whole thing. It's not just the director's responsibility. I think a director is there. This is obviously a producer's job as well. A director's there to make everyone bring out their best work in the room and create that atmosphere. How to break down a text? Just make sure you understand what it means. Make sure you understand the subtext. Subtext is a real biggie, actually. You know, and sometimes we forget, you know, we understand we're reading subtext. We know a character's saying one thing, but actually means another. But never forget that you've got to bring that out when you stage it as well. And that's what I'm saying about table reading. When you actually read these things aloud, you may discover that an actor or an actress is not playing subtext, they're playing text. I think Hannah may have said something about that earlier. She said she was playing one thing and didn't realise until she found.
Yeah, it wasn't. I was 30 runs in before I suddenly realised what the subtext was, and I'd never seen it before, and it created such an emotional reaction in me, because it was so human.
I can't remember what now, but in the last few months I've had to tell actors that they're playing too much subtext, not enough text. They're playing the wrong way around, so things like that happen. I just think, all I can say is just make sure you understand it inside and out, the material, if it's a new script. Obviously, if the author is available, which isn't very often the case, but if the author's available, that's brilliant, because you can actually ask them what they mean, and that happens a lot. I mean, things like Matilda, even, you can't ask Roald Dahl, but Tim Minchin and the writers, they would have all discussed everything in development with the director. No question about it. So I'm not. Has that been helpful enough?
That's great. And the last question is vocational, and I'm really glad, because I feel like I haven't asked you enough sort of vocational questions, like, what does a day in the life of a director look like? Do you get any time to yourself? How does your work-life balance work? Do you have a work-life balance? But this last question is on reaching out to creatives, directors, organizations. What works best in terms of an email? How much do you say? How much do you not say? Can you advise on this? Do you send a CV and a cover letter? Is it just like a friendly letter? Is it, how would you go about contacting a director?
And these are questions I'm asking myself as well at the moment, actually. I think it's got to be short and sweet, and I think attach a CV, definitely. I'm now in a situation where I'm looking for work as well, and I'm going through those same things. I don't know what standard practice is, but I would say attach a CV, short and sweet introduction, capture their attention straight away. A busy producer, it's all about luck anyway. I've had all things happen. You can write to a director on the very moment that they've just been looking for someone, and it's perfect. And others, usually they'll say, I'll keep you on the, I'll let you know if something comes up, and then months and months later they don't. So you've got to keep your eyes open as well, and be smart. Try and be smart. Do you know how I got Dear Reverend Hansen?
No, I don't.
I'm really proud of this, because you can't really control anything, but I'll try and make this really quick. I did something which I swore I'd never do. I watched a bootleg of the show online, and I always swore I would never look at a bootleg, because I thought it was improper. But I heard something about this show about 5 years ago, and I saw there was this bootleg online of Dear Reverend Hansen. I thought I'd just have a little look at the first bit, and 2.5 hours later, I was like, blown away. I couldn't, and I thought, I have got to work on this if I possibly can. And I then started Googling, and there wasn't much about it. Amazon were about to release the actual printed script. I had that delivered the day it came out to my house. I then looked into who's producing it in America. So I did some looking around. I wrote straight away to the management, and I said, I know you haven't announced it coming to London yet, or if it's going to come to London, but if it ever does, please, can you just consider me for an interview? Here's my CV. This is what I've done. I also then worked out that the management were a management that the executive producer of Jersey Boys, who knew my work very well from Jersey Boys, she used to work for them. So I then contacted her, said, can you contact them and say nice things about me if you feel like you can? I contacted them and said, you might want to ask her what I'm like. And nothing happened for 6 months, because my email went to her spam. So
oh my God.
6 months later, she realized, said, oh, Jon, I'm so sorry. And she said, I'll email them now. Within 10 minutes, I got a response from the original people who I had now taking me seriously, because they'd had a recommendation from her. And they told me that that Michael Greif already had somebody in mind in England for the role, but thank you very much. I was like, oh
no way.
Then I tell you what, you couldn't write this stuff. Then I found out that Karen McIntosh was producing it. I'd never worked for Karen McIntosh, so I thought, oh, that's gone away anyway. Then I heard that Karen McIntosh was no longer producing it. it was going to Michael Harrison. So I was like, oh, I know Michael Harrison's wife because I cast her in something. She's been very grateful. So I contacted her, and she said, oh no, Michael's not doing it himself now either. I was like, oh. And then one day I was having a bite to eat with Jill Green, the casting director of Jersey Boys, and I said to her, she said she had a couple of projects she was involved with but couldn't tell me what they were. And I said, well, listen, there's a show coming. If this comes over, there's a show called Dear Evan Hansen. And she grabbed my knee and squeezed it really hard. I thought, not to be kidding, is it that? And she said, yes, but you can't tell anybody. So then I had an ally there, but I still had to be interviewed by the British management. I then had to be interviewed on Zoom by Michael Greif and Stacey, the producer. But I actually actively wrote to everybody and pushed. I've never done anything like it in my life, but I knew I had to work on it. And somehow the stars aligned and I made it happen. But I did, it was a year and a half. It was over a year it took me to get it. And there's still so many ways I could not have got it, but somehow I made it happen and the stars aligned. And, I was very determined.
I think, that is a great example of using your connections to, prostitute those connections, use them as much as you can. I've had people that have contacted me now that I've been in Dear Evan Hansen, oh, Hannah, can you hook me up with this or that? There's never a part of me that's like, no, never. I think if you approach a connection and ask, if you don't ask, you won't get. What's the worst that can happen by just contacting someone and asking for them to put a good word in for you, or to, blah, 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 blah. And what is meant for you will not pass you by. I firmly believe that.
That's true. And I have to say, I'm as insecure as anybody else. But I know now that if I get given a job, even if I think it's beyond my means, I know that I will work flat out to make it work and be good at it. So I have that innate confidence. But you do have, I can't believe myself, I was pushing myself like that, but I knew I wanted to work with these people. I wanted to work with Pasek and Paul. I wanted to work with Michael Greif. These are top people. And I knew I would throw myself into it and learn from them. That's why I wanted to learn. But in terms of going back to your original question about approaching people, mention anything you can that gives you a connection. If there's somebody that's worked with this producer you're writing to or director, mention their name or write to them first, or say, well, so-and-so's told me to write to you. Get their attention with, sell yourself, learn how to sell yourself, and if necessary, learn how to do the job after you get it. But do you know what I mean? I mean, you've got anything that catches their eye in that first sentence.
In that case then, Jon, is there anything you can say to kind of sum up what you have learned with the best directors that you've worked with, and how would you encapsulate that?
Well, that's a good question. What I've learned is they're human. They may be geniuses, but geniuses make mistakes. Geniuses know they've made mistakes, and geniuses are they're just human beings. And I've learned, it's a really good question, Hannah, actually, because I've asked myself this a lot. What have I actually learned from work? And actually I've learned that I think that my ideas are quite good. I've learned that my work approach and work ethic is as good as everybody else's. I think that I've learned for myself that I'll just tell you this because I think it's useful to all of you. But we've got an American, Danny Sharon, Hannah.
Yeah.
Danny's told me several times that Michael Greif thinks I've got great taste.
Right.
Now that means a lot to me, because I know what he means. It means that he knows I don't want a cheap laugh. He knows I'm not. He knows that. So to hear that somebody like that has got a high opinion of my taste, that goes a long way in building my confidence, because it means I now feel good about that. I have got, my choices are good. Do you know what I mean? To have affirmation like that from somebody so incredibly successful means I'm on the right path. I've got something to offer. So that's why I say success breeds success. When you work with somebody you really admire, and then they admire you or pay you a compliment or show trust in you to do something, that's how we get good. That's how we build our confidence. Because there's lots of things I doubt myself about, So I've learned that, Michael said, Michael actually did change some of the things because of things I said.
Yeah.
Which is amazing. That's amazing. That made me feel good about myself. But sometimes it was simple things like Michael wanted things to be very film-like and very natural. But then we couldn't hear them. And I used to speak to him a lot about actors' volume. And eventually one day he said, John, I think you're right. You've been telling me this since Toronto. They need to speak up. And he admitted, so he learned something from me. That's an amazing thing. But he was open to that. So I've learned, I'm also not a genius, and I think Michael is. Do you know what? But I do think it's very wise to surround yourself with people that are better than you. Be around people that are better than you, because that will make you better. Being around people who are not as good as you, you don't learn so much.
Yeah.
So I do like to learn from successful people. Like that's the thing. That's everything we're talking about tonight, isn't it? I think get some experience any way you can with anyone, and decide what you like and what you don't like, and what you think is good taste and what's not good taste, and that's how you learn. You just.
So can you sum directing up sort of the 3 words that come to mind to sum it up, and then we'll say good night to everyone, and a massive, massive, massive thank you, honestly, Jon, for this. I think everyone will probably echo that sentiment with me. Really, really, really appreciate your wisdom, your insight, and all of it. I feel like I've got even more questions now. I'm like, what do you think about this? What do you think about this? But yeah, we'll leave that for part 2.
Well, thank you. I mean, and do remember, you could get different answers on all these questions from other people. It's just my personal experience, my life journey. But 3 words, I don't know. I think leadership, listening, and learning.
I mean,
leadership means you are the captain of the ship, and you're prepared to be the captain. Listening means listening to your cast and everyone around you for better ideas, and then listening to audience responses to see what works, and learning how to get better at all these things. Learning to be a better communicator, learning there are other ways to do things other than your own, and learning what works. Most importantly for all of us, what works on stage and what doesn't. Because if everyone knew the answer to a successful show, every show would be successful.
Thank you so much, Jon. I cannot thank you enough, honestly, personally as well, for taking time.
Can I extend a huge thank you, particularly as I'm not a director, I'm a musical director, and so much of what I do, and I'm sure many other musical directors, work so often with musicians, and for better or worse, actors are a very different breed. But it is so helpful to hear it from an actor and a director's perspective, and to really understand what that interaction means, because that has been a real eye-opener and just invaluable. It's so useful. Thank you.
Well, thank you. As you can tell, I'm very happy talking a lot, but I have got 30 years of experience, so if you ever need any other questions, please get my email address. I'm very happy to. I mean, I agree, there's so many things to talk about, but from what we've spoken about today. But thank you very much for your kind words, Byron. It's lovely to meet you as well. And music department it's very important they have a good relationship with the director as well. But it's very for that to be forgotten, actually, because you're so busy doing your orchestrations in the corner and vocal arrangements and stuff like that. But I think it's really important that those 2 jobs come back together.
One of the things I'm going to do in the rehearsal room this year with RicNic is to stick the piano right next to the director's seat at the table. Last year I was in the corner, and this year I want to be next to create that connection all the time.
Yeah, I think so. And also, I very often I've been in an audition room and I've thought somebody's voice is fantastic, and then the musical director goes, nah. And I go, what? That was fantastic. And they know their voice won't blend. I have no idea if that's true or not, but that's fascinating to me. And other times I hear somebody sing, I go, oh no, no, that was pitchy, and they go, that was fantastic. You know,
It's
that,
so funny. This is what's so annoying about the arts industry, is everything is so down to the opinion of the person in front of you. I've had one casting director say, look in my eyes when you audition. I want you to give me eye contact. And another one that said, why are you looking at me? It makes me feel really uncomfortable. Look behind, see the audience. It's like, you know, there is just an aspect of that, isn't there, in the arts? You just have to sort of, you know, see who you're with, and if you get to know an actor or a director and what their personal taste is, you can play towards that, and if you don't, then that's okay too.
Yeah, I mean, while you're addressing that point, I find that the eye contact thing is a really interesting one. I've never worked with anybody that likes eye contact at all, so I advise all my students, do it above people's heads. I don't want to be part of your performance, because I need to just, I just want to enjoy it. And then recently, the drama school where I'm head of acting, apparently they had a visit a couple of years ago from the Wicked creative team, and they said, "Why aren't you looking us in the eyes?"
It was Wicked who said it to me.
Yeah. I mean, that's amazing to me, because I've never worked with. I ask people all the time, "What do you prefer?" None of us prefer being looked at. So, but again, everything you've heard tonight is just my opinion.
Yeah. But good to know. If any of you audition for Wicked, look the panel in the eye. And if you're auditioning for Jon or for David Grindrod, do not look them in the eye at any cost.
It's strange, you know. But yes, it is a fascinating world, the music and directorial, and it's also about I think what a lot of people find difficult. Hannah, I'll say this: some people who come from a performing background as dance captains and become part of the room. I've had quite a few people who come from being actors who quite understandably are very opinionated about why did you cast so and so in a show? Why did that'll never happen if I'm in charge? And then you've got to learn actually the art of compromise. It is astonishing how much you have to compromise, because, you know, Jersey Boys, the dance department has, well, I'm going to say far too much power. We lose very many of our better actors and singers because the dance department say, no, they've got to be able to do the dance to a certain degree. I understand that, but it's frustrating. But also when it comes to Dear Evan Hansen, we've heard hundreds and hundreds of people singing Evan. At the end of the day, if they can't sing the notes at the end of waving, that's it.
They won't get the job. Yeah, if you can't get the B flat, it's over.
I mean, because we can't put an actor in that position. If it's a struggle for them, it's awful. So it doesn't matter if they're the best actor in the world, the best dancer or whatever. If they can't sing that note, that's it. And we have to sit through the whole song before we get to it. So
I mean, I'm leading a couple of workshops in some schools and colleges where, you know, I'm doing audition prep, and I'll be telling them, you pick your 16 bars and make sure you get that climactic note. And if you don't, then you can kiss that part goodbye, because you wouldn't want a job that's going to give you nodules anyway. Walk away.
No, it's a fascinating thing, casting, when you've got the whole business to cast from, and sometimes you'd be amazed how, you know, there's only one person we could use for Tommy DeVito in the last cast in the whole business. One person was on the list.
Wow, mental. Well, thank you so much, Jon. I massively appreciate it. We all massively appreciate it. And yeah, we have recorded this session. So if you know anyone that would appreciate watching this session and gleaning all of Jon's knowledge, then please do feel free to pass it on to them. And a massive thank you to you, Jon, for donating your time. We are a charity, and it's hugely, hugely appreciated. So,
well, good luck to all of you. And if any of you want to reach out, I'm very happy to give advice as well. Anytime, but good luck with all your projects. And Erica, writing and directing, very brave and fantastic. I'm in awe of you. That's fantastic. So good luck to everyone.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, everybody.
Take care.
Thank you.
Good night.
Good night. Good night.